In fashion, competition was supposed to be about talent, timing, and luck. But for Black women, there was an unspoken rule. There could only ever be one. And that rule nearly destroyed them both.
And then you said, I have to ask you something.
Right.
See, I remember this because I was so new and young. You said, I have to ask you something. Do they try to make you look like me?
Right.
And I said, I don't know about so much now, but in LA, yeah, they really did with the little short black whips
that.
and
You
stuff.
told me that, yeah, I
yes.
remember.
And Naomi, you got up, pushed me away, and said, yeah, I thought so. And you turned.
I did.
You went from the sweetest woman that was giving me vitamins to someone that terrified me on that trip.
Oh my God.
And
For years, Naomi Campbell carried that title. The lone Black supermodel standing at the top of an industry that kept her isolated. She wasn't just modeling clothes, she was proving she belonged. Then came Tyra Banks. 17, determined and striding into Paris with dreams as bold as her walk. Her arrival should have been a celebration of progress. Instead, it was treated like a threat. Editors whispered, agents compared. Headlines declared a rivalry before the women even spoke.
there are some specific things that I remember as if it was yesterday that hurt me and hurt me to my core.
Two rising stars forced into a game neither designed, both trapped by a rule that made their success mutually exclusive. But the story didn't start with Tyra. It began years earlier when another teenager walked into a world that had never seen anyone like her and refused to fade quietly. London, 1987. The runways were pale, polished, and predictable. Then came Naomi Campbell, 17 years old, 5'9", with a face that demanded attention and a walk that turned silence into applause. Discovered in Covent Garden, within months she was walking for Versace, Chanel, and Azzedine Alaïa. But her rise wasn't just fast, it was historic. British Vogue hadn't put a black model on its cover since 1966. Naomi broke that silence. The next year, French Vogue followed only after Yves Saint Laurent threatened to pull his ads unless she was featured. They caved. And with that, Naomi became more than a model. She became a movement. She shattered ceilings polished smooth for decades, but the cruelty was clear. She was treated as the exception, not the beginning. Christy, Linda, Claudia, they appeared together, side by side. Naomi stood alone, celebrated, but only sparingly, admired, but never multiplied. Her beauty was undeniable, but the industry feared what would happen if more women like her stood beside her. That fear shadowed every success, every step. Naomi carried it alone, unknowingly laying the ground for what came next. Paris, 1991. Tyra Banks, just 17, stepped off a plane from Los Angeles and straight into the city of couture. She was still wide-eyed, still hungry, still carrying the raw energy only a newcomer has. The moment she walked into the casting rooms, heads turned. Designers saw something with electric charisma and confidence that couldn't be taught. Within weeks, she booked 25 shows for her first season. No one had ever done that. Overnight, the press crowned her the next Naomi Campbell, the new black supermodel, a triumph twisted into a threat. For them, there could only be one.
But there was an unwritten rule, that only one of them could be black. Only one. 10 girls, but only one could be black. And at that time, Naomi was that one black girl.
Tyra had grown up idolizing Naomi. She studied her covers, practiced her walk, and dreamed of meeting her hero.
I don't know if you know this, but even before I left for Paris, I had your pictures plastered all over my bedroom walls.
I didn't know.
Yeah.
But in Paris, admiration turned into ammunition. The industry's obsession with comparisons was relentless. They didn't see two women breaking barriers, they saw competition. Whispers spread. Tyra was coming for Naomi's throne. She was younger, fresher, easier to mold. The industry wasn't describing a career, they were staging a fight. And the battle began before either woman even spoke. Designers whispered about loyalty. Agents picked sides. Magazines decided who was in and who was out. Tyra had idolized Naomi, posters on her walls, her walk, her angles, her energy. But when they finally met, the warmth she expected never came. Backstage, Naomi's presence hit like lightning. Tyra would later say she felt the temperature drop. Then the rumors began. Shows Tyra had been promised suddenly disappeared. Casting directors stopped calling. Behind closed doors, whispers grew louder. Naomi didn't want her in the same space.
Angelo, was that his name? Okay, Angelo called me, and he said, Tyra, I need to talk to you. And I said, okay. And he had a really weird look on his face. And I said, what is it? He says, I have to cancel you from the fashion show.
Right.
And I was like,
And you instantly thought that was because of me?
No, I didn't. And I said, why? I just did my fitting, I did everything. The show's about to start in 20 minutes. And he gave me a look and kind of did like that toward you. And I was like, okay.
What?
Whether truth or rumor didn't matter. The result was the same. Tyra felt unwanted in an industry she was already fighting to survive. Naomi, meanwhile, was defending the place she'd fought years to secure. Tyra wasn't her enemy, but in a system that only allowed one, every black model became competition by default. Two women caught in the same trap, bleeding from different sides of the same wound.
Between you and I was one of the most difficult times in my entire life.
The years that followed turned silence into distance. The world saw tension. What it didn't see was exhaustion. Both had survived the same battlefield only to emerge in different directions. By the mid-1990s, the line was clear. On one side stood Naomi Campbell, queen of haute couture. She ruled Paris and Milan, her walk so sharp it could slice through air. Designers built collections around her. Photographers chased her light. She was the crown jewel of European runways, proving that timelessness had no skin tone. Across the Atlantic, Tyra Banks was building a different legacy. Her covers weren't about exclusivity, they were about access. In 1996, she became the first black woman on GQ. The next year, the first black woman solo on Sports Illustrated swimsuit. She was everywhere. Commercials, TV, music videos.
You know, so I don't condone her actions and her response, but I understand where it comes from because the world is saying, you're not gonna have your spot, we're gonna take your money, we're gonna take your fame, go sit down, there's somebody else, you know? So, that's pretty serious. She reacted strongly, but...
Naomi became the icon of luxury. Tyra became the face of possibility. Success gave them power, but it didn't erase the past. Headlines quieted, but the tension lingered. Years of rumors, misunderstandings, and silence still hung between them. It had been more than a decade since Paris. Tyra Banks had turned pain into purpose, but one shadow still followed her unfinished business. On her talk show, she invited Naomi Campbell to sit across from her. No runway lights, no stylists, no fashion cameras flashing, just two women, face to face, stripped of the spectacle. Tyra's voice trembled as she spoke. She confessed the years she spent feeling small, the shows she lost, the tears she hid. "You hurt me," she said, words cutting through years of silence. Naomi stayed calm, listening closely. She said she didn't remember those moments, but she was sorry for the pain Tyra carried. It wasn't denial. It was distance, the kind you build when survival means forgetting. That conversation wasn't neat. It wasn't scripted. It was raw, jagged, and painfully real. For the first time, the world didn't see a feud. It saw two human beings exposing what fame and bias had done to them. It wasn't about drama. It wasn't even about forgiveness. It was about truth. And truth has power. Their meeting didn't just soften a headline, it cracked the entire narrative open. Cameras captured something deeper than reconciliation: accountability. Two women who had once been pitted against each other now reflected back the industry's flaws. Once those truths were spoken out loud, there was no way to bury them again. Fashion couldn't pretend anymore. The image of Tyra and Naomi in the same frame forced the industry to look at itself. Slowly, runways shifted. Designers began to cast more black models not as tokens, but as talent. Magazine covers started to show color, variety, and difference. Naomi kept walking, still fierce, still closing the most prestigious shows, proving that timelessness has no skin tone. Tyra turned her scars into power. She created America's next top model, giving young women of every shade, size, and background a chance to be seen. She built companies, wrote books, mentored others, leaving doors open behind her. What had once been framed as a war became something else entirely, a warning. Never again should two women be forced to fight for the same single space simply because of the color of their skin. Their paths revealed a greater truth. Visibility isn't charity. Visibility is justice. But progress always comes with a price. It doesn't take money or fame, it takes pieces of the people who push it forward. For Naomi and Tyra, the cost was peace. Even after reconciliation, the echoes of their past never faded. Tyra admitted that years later, she was still afraid of Naomi, not of who she was, but of the shadow the industry had placed between them. Naomi, on the other hand, grew weary of interviews that circled back to Tyra, as if decades of her own triumphs could not stand without the rivalry attached. The world they fought to change looks different now. Runways once uniform and pale are now alive with color, culture, and confidence. Black, Asian, Latina, Arab models are no longer the exception, but individuals with their own power. Diversity is no longer sold as a trend. It's recognized as beauty itself. Naomi still commands the catwalk in her 50s, showing the world that longevity belongs to women of color. Tyra, long after the lights dimmed on ANTM, continues mentoring, teaching, and building opportunities she once had to claw for alone. The rule of one didn't vanish completely, but it cracked wide enough for others to walk through. Naomi and Tyra were more than models. They were mirrors of everything the industry tried to suppress. Their story was never just about two women who couldn't get along. It was about a system that convinced them they couldn't coexist. They fought battles that weren't theirs to fight, but their victories reshaped what beauty itself could mean. Naomi's presence demanded respect. Tyra's voice demanded inclusion. Together, they exposed an industry obsessed with perfection and forced it to confront its own cracks. They turned rivalry into revelation, pain into legacy. If this story moved you, hit like, subscribe, and share your thoughts in the comments. Which moment from Naomi and Tyra's journey stayed with you the most? Let's talk about it. Because their story isn't just fashion history, it's proof that breaking barriers is only the beginning.